Good day there viewers, my name is Cliff, I'm a gem cutter from Australia and welcome to my channel called Vintage Time. In today's episode I'll be faceting man-made quartz and I'll be faceting a freeform design for a competition. Last year I was fortunate enough to win the competition, but I had a little bit of help from my little buddy Jaws who designed the gem. This year Jaws is designing another gem. Let's go and see how he's going and I'll grab some lunch along the way. Good day there Jaws, how's it going mate? How's the design for the gem coming along? When you're finished you can have this jumbo burger for a treat. Hello everyone, we're back into the real world and what you're seeing now is a piece of man-made quartz. Yes, you didn't hear me wrong, it's man-made. Sometimes they call this product fused quartz or hydrothermal quartz. I think most gem cutters call it hydro quartz. For me, this is the first time I've faceted this product and there is a bit of a question mark whether it is a quartz or whether it is a type of glass. From one perspective, I'm really looking forward to faceting this hydro quartz as I like to learn about new products and learn new things in general when it comes to faceting, but also I'm a little bit apprehensive because if it's glass, then as a gem cutter you're up against it with all sorts of issues like trying to get it polished and also the brittle nature of glass. For me, the biggest issue is that as a gem cutter, I want to be faceting gems, preferably real gems and then synthetic gems, but the lines become blurred when man-made quartz is really glass. So before we start faceting, let's have a look at the design that Jaws has come up with, and we do need to pay special credit to Robert Strickland for coming up with the original concept of this design. So in this year's design there's one less girdle facet, but there is a major tweak within the brilliant facets. So that's a big change up this year. So we're not going to give you all the angles and indexes because we don't want anyone copying this design. Unfortunately there has been a small handful of people, and I say a very small handful, that have taken other people's designs, tweaked them a little bit, made them their own and trying to publish those works. Of course when people design gems that there could be similarities, and this happens all the time with many things in life from literature to music, and it's just pure coincidence and happenstance. But when someone deliberately takes a design and takes someone's idea and then tries to promote it and sell it, well that's a different story. So moving right along, what I'm going to do now is pre-form the outline of the gem. So basically you're getting the girdle outline. I'm using 100 grit topper lap because I do have a fair bit of material to remove. So with these freeform designs you get a blend of a brilliant pavilion with a step cut crown and using Barrier facets. So in this year's video for faceting the freeform competition gem, I'll be using different products and you'll see that coming up soon, but also I'll be using different steps throughout the whole process. So if you want to see the differences in how I go about faceting this gem compared to last year, I'll drop in a thumbnail of last year's video and you can search for it and just have a look at it if you wish. So in this piece of footage here you can see that I've done a basic preform using the 100 grit diamond topper lap, and I'm finding that this particular man-made quartz is a little bit tougher than glass, and glass is very similar to obsidian so it cuts pretty fast, but this is sort of in between glass and quartz, not quite as hard as the quartz. So the next step now is for me to cut the first tier of the pavilion facets, and I do need to remove a lot of material, so once again I'm using the 100 grit topper lap. So I've done a little bit of research on whether this man-made quartz is a true quartz substitute or whether it is a type of glass, and there seems to be quite a bit of conjecture around on this particular product. It has been known for a long while that quartz has been created in a lab environment, mainly for industry purposes, for watches and clocks and microphones and all sorts of things. So to manufacture this product costs about the same as mining it. I'm not a lab geek, nor am I a scientist, but from what I've read, that this man-made quartz is produced through what is known as the hydrothermal transport method. So from what I understand, a huge container is used called an autoclave, which is a pressure sealed container of about 3 meters or more in height. This particular autoclave contains a whole bunch of different chemicals and solutions, from sodium carbonate or hydroxide, and then it's seeded with small fragments of quartz. Then the temperature is raised to about 400 degrees centigrade, and the quartz fragments start to dissolve and crystallize into seeds. On the flip side, there are plenty of articles out there where people say this hydro quartz is simply glass, with very little scientific backing to prove otherwise. Such reports say that the hydro quartz, which is supposed to be a substitute for quartz, is often made in China or India, and it just turns out to be just glass. Now that could be true, but this also could be true for many other gems, because we do have fake sapphires and we do have fake emeralds and rubies, and they are often made out of other materials also. So from my point of view, as I mentioned earlier on, it does feel a bit tougher than glass under the lap. It's just grinding differently, but the proof in the pudding will be later on when I go to polish it, because glass is very difficult to polish. So as you can see now that both the pavilion facets and the girdle outline have been roughly cut out with the 100 grit topper lap. So the next thing I'm going to do is move on to a 600 grit topper lap and start smoothing out those pavilion facets. So the pavilion facets now are looking quite a bit smoother than previously after using the 100 grit diamond topper lap. I haven't touched the girdle outline, so next step will be to use a 1200 grit diamond lap, and you'll see here that things look a lot smoother after using the 1200 grit topper lap. So as mentioned earlier, I'm using a couple different products that I have never used before on a video. I'm going a little bit old school here, using a copper lap. And I've got several copper laps and I never use them, and I actually had to ask, about this process of using copper laps with my faceting group about pre-polishing, because I thought that I could go one extra step better with pre-polishing, and one guy mentioned how he did it, so I'm going to give this a try. I'm using a THK diamond paste, and you can buy this off eBay, and it's a 5 micron, which is equivalent to 4,500 grit diamond. So this is what the pavilion facets look like now after using the pre-polish of a copper disc and the 5 micron diamond paste, and I think things have worked out pretty well so far. So to smooth out the girdle outline, I'll be using the same order of discs, a 600, 1200 and then a pre-polish with the copper and the 5 micron diamond paste. So the next step for me will be to start faceting a few more of the pavilion facets. So the second tier of the pavilion has now been faceted, but I haven't faceted fully down to depth. I'll facet a little bit more to depth in the next scene when I use the copper pre-polish disc with the 5 micron paste. Now this 5 micron paste is fairly aggressive, so it will cut quite a bit of material away. So both the first and second tier of the pavilion facets are completed with the pre-polish using the copper disc and the diamond paste. In this scene here, I've done a final polish on the first tier of pavilion facets, and I've done the girdle facets. Now I've used a tin lap with a 50,000 grit diamond compound. So normally I would polish the girdle facets and then I would cut all the remaining facets on the pavilion, which would be 3 tiers, and then I would do the final polish starting from the girdle outline all the way down to the culette, but I'm doing something different this time. So the intention here was to polish these second tier facets to a perfect center point, based on the assumption that when I cut the third tier, the culette facets, they should be perfectly centered also. So I've cut the culette facets, and if all goes well with the final tier, as I think it has, you form perfect kite facets, so you don't need to tweak those in too much, which I hadn't had to do on the last gem I did last year. I had to cheat a few in, but this seems to be a bit more accurate. So we're going to move on to the next step, which will be faceting the crown, and I might talk about a product that I'm using to clean the dust off these gems. As you can see, it's dust particles. So before I go faceting the crown, you can see that there is quite a good final polish on this hydro quartz, which seems to suggest that it's not typical of how glass does polish. So the pavilion of the gem is now complete, and we are on to the second phase of faceting this gem, which is faceting the crown. Before I can do this, for the benefit of a new viewer, this is called the secondary transfer, where the original dop stick will be taken off and another dop stick is placed onto the gem in order for me to facet that crown. So at the moment I'm ready to cut the first set of crown facets with a 100 grit topper lap, and then I'll move on to a 600 grit and then a 1200 grit, and of course we'll do a pre-polish with a copper lap. As you can see here, I've cut down to a certain depth with the 100 grit topper lap, but I'm not game to go any further because I was warned by one of the members of my faceting group that this piece of material can chip easily. And in point of fact, the person who told me about this is Tony, and he actually gave me this piece of hydro quartz. So thank you, Tony, for giving me the opportunity to facet something different. So the next step is to do a pre-polish, once again using the copper lap and the 5 micron diamond paste. Now the first set of crown facets have been pre-polished, and I'm going to do something totally different than I did last year when I cut the freeform design. I'm going to actually do a final polish on what we call the C1 first tier crown facets. To do the final polish on the C1 crown facets, I'm using my tin lap and I'm using a 50,000 grit diamond compound. There are quite a few facetors out there that swear by this method, by cutting one step and then completing that step to a final polish, then you cut the next step and then you do a final polish on that, and then you do your final step if that's the final step, and do a final polish on that until you finally polish the table. I'm not convinced that this is the best method, particularly on round brilliance, but on a step cut, yeah, I think it is a good method, and I thought, well, I would try this again. I've done it before and just see what happens. So as you can see here, I've cut the second step on the crown, and I'll go through the same process of doing the final polish on that also. So this sequencing of polishing, as you can see, is normally a lot different than what I would normally do if you look at some of my other videos. So the next step is to cut the table, then polish that. But before I do that, I want to show you a little tip. So if you're like me, you've probably had a lot of trouble trying to keep your gems clean once they've been removed from the DOP. And it doesn't matter what cloth or what cleaning fluid you use, there's always little particles of dust and lint on the gem, and particularly with the dark gems. Well, this product, these lens wipes for glasses, really does work. So I'm on to the final step where I need to cut and polish the table of the crown, and then I'll remove it from the DOP. So this means we're getting closer to the end of another video. And I'd just like to say that I had a lot of fun cutting this gem. I think it looks really good. All these gems I think look better in real life than in the final reveal, which will be coming up soon when you see the gem finally totally off the DOP stick and on a rotator. But I'm not sure whether this gem will win the competition, because I think that my rivals, my competitors, will be trying very hard to outdo me this year. I do think this will score reasonably well, because I think I've got the meat points a little bit better than last year, but who knows with the judges, you know, depending on how they feel on the day, they might pick up things I don't see, because usually they do. They're very good at spotting things that you don't see. So that's the role of being a good judge. So anyway, in closing, I'd like to say goodbye to all my subscribers and viewers, and if you're new to my channel, look, you may not have comprehended everything you saw today, so leave some comments. So until next time, take care everybody, and it's bye for now.